Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on combating mental health stigma in the workplace. I'm going to let some people filter in the background, just to let everyone know that this webinar will be recorded and available on demand via the Mental Health Reform and Cara Connect websites. And I'm delighted to have today's webinar be the first collaboration between our two organizations. I'd like to introduce Philip Watt, the interim CEO of Mental Health Reform, and Tobbe Vigfusdottir, who is the CEO of Cara Connect. Philip will take the first half of the presentation, Tobbe will take over, and then we'll have some time at the very end for some Q&A. So we have a good few people filtered in. So Philip, I'm going to give you the spotlight. I'm going to remove myself, and you can take it away, Philip.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Philip Watts. I'm the interim CEO of Mental Health Reform. I'm delighted to join you here and very much looking forward to hearing Tobbe's presentation. And I'm very conscious that we have our expertise, but also Cara Connect obviously have a massive expertise in terms of promoting good mental health and well-being in companies and working with psychologists in the past. So we feel very privileged to be working with you here today. So just to say a little bit about what we are about, we're a coalition of over 80 mental health organizations, and you may be familiar with some of them: Pieta, Jigsaw, Barnardo's, the ISBCC, and we represent our members on many different forums. So I suppose to commence, I suppose it's worth just considering what do we mean by stigma, and there are many definitions of what stigma means, but as probably the most succinct is, stigma is when someone feels they're being seen in a negative way on the basis of such factors as gender, age, marital status, family status, sexual orientation, race or ethnicity, as I would prefer to call it, religion, membership of the traveling community, and disability. And disability in this context, under Irish legislation, does include mental health difficulties. These are just some of the opportunities for support services which are available ourselves, but also Pieta. We particularly draw your attention to who are very experienced in this regard and have very experienced staff to provide counselling if necessary. And also, of course, the HSE, the Health Service Executive, have a site related to mental health, which is marked there. And the Samaritans, of course, too. I suppose what underpins all issues related to international law and conventions around mental health and indeed disability. Well, the main one is the UN Convention on people with the rights of people with disability, persons with a disability. And this is an international agreement that was originally signed by Ireland in 2007, but it took us until 2018 before we ratified it. So I suppose that's done now, and that's positive. And the body which is entrusted to making sure that the Irish government fully takes on board the convention is the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, which is right beside us, actually, here in where we're working at the minute. So I suppose why are we kind of looking at this topic, mental health in the workplaces? It's complex. Firstly, as I mentioned, it's not often understood that mental health is actually covered under the grounds of disability in our equality legislation. As I mentioned, it's one of the 9 grounds. But secondly, there are many factors which might act as barriers to employment for people with mental health difficulties. These include attitudinal barriers, so that issue of stigma, people acting towards you because of perceived characteristics. And sometimes that can be internalized into self-stigma, where people start to blame themselves because of the stigma which has been, which has been directed towards them. Sometimes that is kind of, in fact, it happens in a number of ways, how that actually manifests itself in the workplace. But sometimes, people with mental health challenges are viewed sometimes as being incapable, or else that somebody else knows what's in their best interest or makes decisions without them. Communication barriers, not being listened to, not being given an opportunity to participate in the decisions that affect them. Social barriers, and indeed institutional barriers, because Ireland, unfortunately, doesn't have the mental health support services that many other countries, and a European Union report in 2023 noted that Ireland had the highest difficulty in accessing mental health services. In other countries, there's legal barriers, and also we were trying, as an organisation, we're trying to enact the new mental health bill, which is it's working its way through the Oireachtas at the minute, and it's really important that that happens, because it'll update our mental health legislation to what is accepted standards in 2025. But in other countries, of course, there are active discriminatory laws that affect people in the workplace, and fortunately, that's not the case here. But there are other softer issues why there are barriers to addressing mental health challenges in the workplace. The fear of disclosure, what that may mean. And we would always advocate to think closely about disclosure and disclose to people you know and trust, but to be aware of the pros and cons of that process. But in general, a problem shared is better than something which is hidden away and we're trying to deal with it on your own. So whether it's within the family, if you're looking for supports, or whether it's in the workplace, and if you have a positive workplace ethos, to talk to somebody you can trust, and of course, to be assured that your conversation is absolutely in confidence is really, really important. So just to, I suppose, just highlight some of the experiences that we have discovered from a survey we conducted in 2024. It's in relation to, these are the key ones that came up from people who do have a lived experience of mental health challenges. And the one, number one there is being rejected in the employment application process. So again, disclosure is a key issue, and it's a bit like the organisation I worked with before, with Cystic Fibrosis Ireland, and we always said to think very carefully before indicating that you have a condition like cystic fibrosis. It's not required that you do so, but it's but obviously fear of being rejected in the employment application process, whether it's a reality or whether it's just a concern, is a matter that came up in discussions. And of course, being able to link such rejection to the disclosure. So, after the recruitment stage is being made, that continuing feeling that you maybe have to hide is obviously a matter of key concern. And it's great that organisations like Cara Connect can discuss these issues and provide expertise to companies, because I know it's really, really badly needed. And a third issue was like, I suppose it's been patronised, that people feel, a line manager might exclude you, not for maybe, deliberately or so, but they think they have a duty of care to you. Maybe, people aren't allocated the roles and the work that they should be, or they're gradually eased out, which are managed out, or maybe they don't get the promotion that they that they really deserve, or else the impact of extended leave, etc. So there is the stigma issue relating to the ability to continue role does go through the organisation from the application process right through, and it's so important, and it's something I've been very impressed by Cara Connect to. Really, it's not just like a tick box exercise, but it's really creating an environment within the workplace which is really positive, and where people hear and are empathetic. So a positive management culture is really important. And in that context, there is legal requirement to as well to provide reasonable accommodation for diversity, including disability and mental health challenges. So that's provided in the Employment Equality Acts, and it's been enshrined since 2004. And that means that employers must take appropriate measures to meet the needs of disabled people in the workplace. And the employer must make arrangements for disabled people, including those with mental health difficulties. You know, equal opportunities in terms of all aspects of work, treated as in the same way as co-workers, and to be understanding, and to have equal opportunities in promotion, and of course training as well.
Thanks, Philip. I'll interject here for a second, if that's okay, just on some of our survey results from 2024 around supportive workplaces, and just to get some of the employees' views. We can see that 42% of employees agree that senior leaders encourage a focus on mental health through their actions and behaviours. 38% agree that managers are confident to have sensitive discussions and signpost people to expert help. And then 29% say managers are confident and competent to spot the early warning signs of mental health difficulties. So these numbers are still quite low, especially the third aspect there. That means that over 70% don't feel like their managers are confident and competent. And obviously that's the figure we are trying to increase. And hopefully in Tubba's presentation later, we can see some tools for managers to do this. Philip, you can go back now.
Yeah, so I suppose what do we mean by a positive management culture? And I'm very confident that Tubba does lead from the front in terms of this, but leading by the example, you know, developing a knowledge of mental health. You know, I'll be honest, prior to September this year, my focus was on other health issues and conditions, although I did know the challenges from cystic fibrosis around anxiety and depression. But it's been a steep learning curve for me, and it still is. The need to normalize mental health in the workplace. I think COVID did this for a lot of us, that really, in terms of, we all at some stage have mental health challenges throughout our lives, and in some cases, I think up to about 50% can have severe mental health challenges. So the need to normalize it, as I said, COVID brought a lot of these issues out, and there's greater understanding of mental health. There'll be much more to go. In terms of positive management, you know, just line managers being available to staff on a reasonable basis is really important as well, that you've good employment conditions, and it's written in the handbooks and stuff like that. You know, to treat people as individuals, people, you know, with mental health challenges, it doesn't always, you know, each person will be very different in terms of how it impacts them on them. And sometimes it's related to issues such as, you know, social determinants, such as access to housing, maybe problems at home, you know, family difficulties and so on. So there's a need to think a little bit broader than the workplace, in a reasonable way. It's like the word is reasonable accommodation. You know, people in the workplace can't solve everybody's challenges, but to be open to hear and to look for positive decisions, and bed employee engagement, creating conditions and opportunities for coaching and learning development, and of course, you know, the promotion of positive work relationships is really important. You know, and even around I experienced 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago now, when my wife died, like you know, like a significant life opportunity, life challenge like that really can create a lot of difficulties, and at the time, and it takes a long time to get over, and people have to work through it. So it's just supports for normal life events. It's just so important too. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing, Philip. And we'll move on to external triggers as well, as you've just kind of highlighted there a little bit, but to focus maybe on the workplace triggers slightly for people, working long hours and not taking breaks. There could be unrealistic expectations or deadlines set by the employer on the employee. high pressure environments, unmanageable workloads or lack of control over your work, lone working. We've obviously seen a huge increase in hybrid and remote working, which definitely has positives, but for some people it definitely has negative consequences as well, unfortunately. Job insecurity or change or poor change of management. Again, we're living in a tumultuous time for employment, so people could be losing their job or have a threat of losing a job, or even just an unsupportive workplace culture or lack of management support. Now, I'm aware that people joining today's webinar, just by joining, it shows that they're trying to have a supportive workplace, which is obviously very positive. And then just negative relationships or poor communication in general can all be workplace triggers for people with mental health difficulties. And we also all have lives outside of the workplace, and we all can have external triggers as well. I'm not going to speak through all of these here, but as people can see, there's many examples such as social disadvantage, poverty or debt, severe or long-term stress. Domestic violence obviously is another key trigger. And yeah, people can look through these themselves, and they'll be available in the slide deck afterwards. Back to you, Philip.
Thanks very much, Stephen. So there are, again, everybody is an individual, but there are some signs which perhaps the managers should look out for, and always the most obvious one is changes in a person's usual behavior, perhaps poor performance at work, increased and unexplained absenteeism. Headaches is sometimes a sign, and again, this is all to the individual, can vary enormously. A noticeable increase in alcohol consumption or smoking. The punctuality issue, people turning up late, tearfulness, just people being emotional in work or maybe around a particular issue when it's not related at all to work. Sometimes it can be related to something in their background or just an issue that they're going through. The loss of humor too, I saw that. I was really pleased to see that in Cara Connect's website, that humor is so important in the workplace, and I know it really helps me throughout my career. To appropriate humor, of course, is absolutely the case, but it's a little bit of laughter does help a lot, I think, in terms of well-being. To watch out for tiredness as well, in terms of, I've just noticed you look very tired recently, or you want to chat to somebody. These are all really important issues. I won't go through all of these, but these are just, I suppose, some best practice interventions. How are you doing at the moment? You seem a bit down. I just, in a very quiet, supportive way, and of course, do it in a way which is away from any other member of staff, is really, really important. So choose an appropriate place. Avoid making assumptions. It could be just something which is temporary, a life issue that people are working through, or it could be something which is more long term. Embed confidentiality, what completely undermines, supporting employees if any information leaks out, even in a casual way. That is absolutely, a bottom line, really. To respond, flexibility, is really, really important as well. And if issues persist and challenges persist, is maybe to develop an action plan, between the line manager and the staff member, but not in a kind of very contrived way, So, I say, usually employers don't want to that. Yeah, exactly. So it's just really to try and create that environment, but it's very challenging. Some employers are very good on some aspects of employment. I know that from my own experience, and others, they're less knowledgeable or less empathetic, or maybe they've less skills as well. So there's a huge challenge to try and raise these issues if they're not already there, and to raise that positive environment. So just to conclude, there are a number of resources for employers and managers out there, and If you're looking at the kind of legal stuff which underpins stuff, then come to our website. But I'd also point you to the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. They have a very good summary on the Employment Equality Acts, so that really kind of shows what people's rights are. Mental Health Europe have a very nice document on the power of language. Mind UK and CIPD there in terms of supporting mental health at work, wellness action plans, Mental Health Ireland. So there are a lot there which is really, really important. And I know, as I've stressed throughout this, the expertise within your own organisation and your experience as well. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about that now. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Philip. And just to let everyone know, we'll be sharing all the resources afterwards that Philip has just mentioned there in our summary email and with the recording of this webinar. So I'm delighted to introduce Tobbe Vig Fusdottir from Cara Connect, who is going to take over the presentation. Just give me 1 second, Tobbe, and I will spotlight you. Best of luck, Tobbe. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not somehow able to share. If Francisco can help me share the slides, there's some kind of a system lock on my, but I'll start. Very, very nice. And I am honored to be with you today. We are Cara Connect. We are trying to change the access points to all these practitioners that people need to talk to at some point in their life. So that's basically our story. I'm a cognitive psychologist by training. I was studying metacognitive development, which means how the brain starts being able to think about our thoughts. And with this comes the limitation of metacognitive abilities. So I was basically studying for a long while. I was studying how we could help those that didn't have those capabilities in communicating and having discussions, because it's hard. It's autism, it's sociopathic behavior and things like that. So we have built around that idea because people need different things in different lives, and this is why we are really thinking about stigma in general, because there's different open access points for different people is going to increase the likelihood that people seek help. And so I just want to kind of open with this, and I'll tell you a little bit about Cara Connect, if we can go forward, Francisco. The story basically started 10 years ago almost with building a workstation for practitioners. So this is the reason why we have 3,000 practitioners and over 60 kinds of professional service provisions. So we built this with the practitioners and for them, trying to figure out how we could optimize access to them, because in the discussion in Ireland and in the Nordics about waiting lists, it's really weird because we do have, if you calculate how many practitioners we do have a lot, but the access points are really hard to find. There are lots of single workers, they're just working for themselves, and the clinics are the ones that get the waiting lists, but there are a lot of people all over the place. And that when COVID hit, all of a sudden it was okay for most people to do online as well. So that changed a lot. 2 years ago, just about, we started, building Cara Connect as a, if you will, book a table or a Uber kind of a system where we would have the payers as companies. We would have well-being hubs for accessing, the employees could access different help at different times in their life. And then the same product for the practitioners. So basically we are digitally, we're knocking on the doors of the practitioners and saying, are you ready to be on Vodafone Ireland hub? And they say yes or no. And we're actually customizing the accesses. So we're curating the hub depending on what kind of people are in the company. So for example, yesterday we were launching with a big recycling company in London. 80% of the team is middle-aged men. 350 are driving trucks, and you have to have a lot of different creative ways to introduce this to them. But the key part is through the managers, because the managers are supposed to, like we just heard, spot the signs and have that discussion and figure out what's going on, and then offer the Wellbeing Hub to them. It's of course open to them whenever they need it, but that's key that the managers are trained to use this, to offer this, because they're not trained to be psychologists. They should be open to, though, helping them find help together on Hub if people are not doing that already themselves. And then finally, we have a critical incident support. So it's a very bad story, but critical incidents happen, and somebody dies, there's a suicide, there's a bad accident, and a lot of people are affected. So we have a specific team that is trained for critical incidents. So if we move forward, I'm going to try to do this a little quickly. As you probably all know who are attending this webinar, we are in a crisis, and we don't really want to say that a lot, but we are. I mean, it's getting worse with the Gen Z coming to work. And I'll talk a little bit about the Gen Z being different, but we do have a bit of a crisis already in the workplace. Like yesterday's company had 15 specific suicide attempts from 15 different people. And this is a lot to put on managers, but this is the new era. Managers have to deal with a lot of personal issues, and our research says that 30% of their time is now spent on trying to figure out how people are doing. And this is not necessarily a quality that you grow up in a company with. You're basically a good manager in processes or something. That so many of them need to be retrained in talking about these things, and coming into stigma a little bit later. So if we move on. And please put in questions as I go. And this is just the cost. Everybody is seeing these changes and the costs of staff absences. And we are just listening to the HR managers. They are overwhelmed, and the line managers almost as well. So we really need to, all the mental health systems really need to help as much as possible. There's room for a lot more work in this field. So moving on. So we are, and I have to admit, when we built what we are building, we didn't know what an EAP was. But now we know that the EAPs, even though they really want to do well, but they're failing because it's basically not, the business model is failing, not necessarily the systems itself. The business model is so that most of your companies that are listening are probably have some people that have health insurance, but not everybody. And the insurance companies gives you almost for free an EAP program that is supposed to help people, or the whole company, in some kind of mental health or distress. So the usage is very, very low. This is how many people are using it. It's not trusted, and the practitioners that we pay fairly only get like a 30 euro per session. So this is why it's failing, and this is why the HR managers are feeling it, feeling the heat of all these problems coming to their desk. Sometimes people are sent away because of bereavement and things like that. So we are hoping to partner with some of the EAPs to get it up to a new level where this is actually not for free, because help is not free. And if we're going to have good practitioners to help people get better, we have to pay them. So that's our philosophy going forward. And this is what we do. If you can just go to the next one. I think you have to do twice, Francisco. Yeah. So we built, this is a Vodafone product example. So we have Vodafone in Ireland, and they decided to call it Hybrid Health. And they decided that they have a lot of young people. So we curated it with different kinds of professionals and different kinds of languages. We can also build leadership hubs for just the managers. We often start with just the managers and help them get to know this, and then they go forward, and we do a wellbeing hub as well for everyone. And it works so that the company decides how many sessions each employee can get. And let's say it's 6 sessions per person, and we're reaching about 23% on average. So we have a very good usage point. People are doing this without talking to their manager. They're also talking to their manager and then getting help. they're also talking to us and saying, I'm missing somebody that is more like me, or there's nobody speaking this language. And then we just add to the platform. And the HR managers get another view and see who is being booked and what's, specifically being talked about, but no names or anything, of course. If six sessions are not enough, the psychologist can come back and say, I need to work more on this person. And usually the manager says, yes, go ahead. So we are working very closely with the managers. The fact that it's fine, you can go on. The fact that we are in the companies, I have to admit, so I started this, I was a politician before, which is a really weird CV, but I didn't realize how ready the companies were to invest more in their people. And when we were trying this out, we started with a big hospital and then an energy company, and we could see we are very well equipped because of the digital access points to go into blue collar companies and security related companies. And we're now just hearing a lot of things, and I'll share with you, and please ask. But if we can move a little bit, I just want to say what needs to change, because we have had a very good input now from Stephen, no, from Philip, to say what's going on, but the consequences of stigma and not noticing people are not doing well is this. The research is mostly on men, but I would reckon that is most also comes to cultural differences or language differences. So the consequences are higher suicide rates because they do not speak about the problem with anyone. They end up giving up, and then increased substance use and the strain on relationship at work and at home. So that's what we were talking about earlier. Make a notice of different signs on relationships. If the humor has disappeared, or somebody is overly active and overly loud, that's also a sign. Trying to figure out if people are just leaving the party, people that had beers with the coworkers but leave, maybe have just one but leave. So changes in behavior are something that you should notice. And that means, as a manager, you have to kind of have a sense of everybody's behavior and regularity. And if we move a little bit into the next one. So the barriers, like we talked about before, are the social and cultural norms about masculinity. And now we have to pause, because this is changing quite a bit. This is a generational gap. So we have a generation like, a middle-aged group of men that have these norms about masculinity. They were brought up being the ones that were supposed to come in with the money into the home. It's changing a little bit, with Gen X. And then it's changing a lot with Gen Z. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then they have a really hard time expressing their emotions. And this is a very important one, in my opinion. So they seem to lack words for discomfort. So if you think about it, men, they would say, I feel shit today. They will use like regular kind of colloquial words about how they're feeling. But as opposed to women that would say, I'm just really feeling down, and just describe it a little bit more. And that's a very big gender difference. They also think their self-reliance is on them. They should be taking care of themselves. And it links to the high costs, high costs of actually paying out to go to a therapist. They think that is a huge barrier, because they are supposed to make sure that they can pay their mortgage and so. And then the mental health stigma is still in the workplace. The word crazy, he's a crazy, and just hearing that in the bar about someone actually increases the stigma of going to a therapist. So these things seem to be very clearly masculine barriers. And so we are, always trying our best to make sure that that our product opens up to this. And I'll tell you a little bit about that if we change here. So how do you do this without the stigma? Number 1 and 2 and 3 is that sharing stories within. So yesterday's launch, it was the chairman of the company who stood up and said, I have struggled with mental health, and I really care that our company, helps those that are struggling. And it's everywhere. Just Just that. He didn't need to say why or what, but these things are super valuable. And if it's not done by at the top, it's going to be hard to build trust between managers and line and the team. The values and the brand need to include things like kindness and listening skills. You know, the company's brand needs to soften to make sure that the culture is done the right way. So that you can uh, talk to people that are not kind or not listening and say this is not a part of our culture. So this is super important too. It's also management. And then it's this well-being support to offer the choice and cultural differences. So this is where we come in, and we are helping the managers when they are at a loss of words or not knowing what to do. They can actually open the well-being hub and say, should we maybe find something together and see if you can find someone here to talk to? Because the managers, and I say that in number 6, they need to also know where the limits, their limits are. You know, they are not supposed to have the discussion about a suicide. They're not supposed to have a discussion about marital problems or things like hard cultural clashes or something hard like this. They need to have a way to opt out and help them take the next step. So how can I help you should be known and in a culture of a good mental health company. Like, what can I can do this for you, I can do this for you, and I can do this for you. Do you want me to support that? And then ask also, what kind of help do you have? Because some people just don't have anything. So that's the confidentiality and trust that managers and support need to offer. And that's, again, how we equip the line managers to lead these well-being efforts. What do they really need to know? How do they spot the signs? How do they kind of talk to someone about what to do next? And that's why we offer leadership hubs. So there are coaches, leadership coaches that can help them take the next steps in the discussion that they have. And then I put in there, talk about emotions. I know that's a hard one, but you know, creative managers can actually go try, you know, play with the words, and you know, could be a board in a, you know, pause in a managers meeting to say, you know, what are these words meaning to us? Just getting everybody to the same words in the same place. Can we change? So I decided to add this because all the research that I was looking at is men, and then a pretty older cohort. So the research has been done, and you know how the research comes in like 10 years later after the fact. So all this research is a little bit different in generations. So Gen Zs, there's a truck coming into your workplace. It's not because they're lazy or entitled or snowflakes. It's because their mental health is really bad. And it's not because we didn't, you know, do enough as parents or, you know, friends. It's because of social media. So we have a problem at our hand. They're coming in with a brain that hardens during social media time. They spend about 6 to 7 hours a day on social media. They're doing it way too early when their brain is almost liquid. So we basically are part of the generation that allowed this experiment to go through with our young children. And now we are all in this together to welcome them to the workplace. They have amazing skills, digital skills. They're very empathetic, and they're not afraid of talking about their mental health. So that's completely different stigma in the workplace. So they are going to be talking to their manager about their mental health, and the manager isn't prepared. You know, they've never seen this before. So I think that's super important, and I'm not going to dwell long on this, but I would love to talk about this later with you or your teams and your companies. It's no problem. And we just have just one thing to give you here, well-being calendar that you can just put in, and it goes in, and you can know what's coming up, and we can help you with that if you need practitioners from our group of practitioners to talk about things. So for example, Women's Health Day is coming up, Women's Health and International Day, sorry. And one company is going to launch a Women's Health Hub for that time for 6 months to just give them a little bit of an access to talk about their whatever health or awareness that they want to do with women. So just to give you that, this will all be shared with you. And then I think I am done. I hope I have some questions waiting, Stephen.
Hi, Tuba. Yeah, Francisco is going to take this next stage, and I think we do have a couple of questions in the chat there, Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go to the first one. Justina was talking before, and I think Phil already replied a bit about that, about how people with mental health difficulties are not getting jobs, or they are discriminated in the recruitment process. So do you want to add anything about that, Philip?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, and to be honest, there's no easy solution to it. But I think I know from my previous work in cystic fibrosis, it's like just be very careful about disclosing things that you don't need to disclose. I know people who were sometimes stopped getting employment because of acknowledging the condition that they have. You don't have to do that. And often it's the case when they get into employment, their employers would say, I wouldn't have employed you if I had known you had this or that, but I can see you're an excellent worker and we're glad that we've recruited you, so just seek advice, in terms of what you have to disclose and what you don't have to disclose. And I think it's my understanding is that if employers reach out to your doctors are not compelled at all to say, give any kind of specific knowledge about a condition. Just be wary of too much disclosure would be my view, and get advice on it.
Good, thank you. There's another question for Toba. Is the research on men consequences of stigma slide purely in the blue-collar organizations or wider?
No, wider. Yeah, it was a few, like 5 research documents I was putting together for different types of people. Yeah. And because, for example, there have been some research. I didn't actually quote that now, but there is some research on bankers. So it's also just the competitiveness in the workplace. For example, in banking, you have to deliver, but you can get really, really rich if you deliver. So you wouldn't let anybody know about your mental health because you get dropped quickly from the job, and there are a line of bankers, young bankers, waiting for your job. So it is dependent, I think, on where you're working, but it's also just mainly the culture. So if a bank would say, I know you're all going to be struggling, it's going to be a stressful environment, please feel free to get help. If the managers are saying that, that would be a totally different way to help these people.
Thank you, Toba. For everyone who is attending the webinar, feel free to ask anything that comes to mind. Like, there are not right or wrong answers here, so a question, sorry. But feel free to ask anything to Toba and Philip. And there is another question for Toba. Does Cara Connect report who attends the service to managers? So is there information that goes to the manager on what's happening with their employees? And
no, so
on?
we have a highly secure system. So if neither Cara Connect nor managers or anybody in the company knows who you're booking with, you are connected to a silo of the professional. So the professional has his own workstation. It's not connected together. So it's a completely confidential relationship with the securest health law in place. So we did a lot of work to get that through, because practitioners are really in trouble if they have some glitch in this process. So it's doubly encrypted and kept under GDPR rule and ISO, and we have a Nordic authentication system audit, which was very tough. So we spent quite a bit of money to make sure that this is okay. The EAPs today are like email based or phone based, and they're not secure at all. So that's a bit. I think that's a big reason we're seeing much more uptake in Cara Connect, because people know that nothing is going to be overheard, or go to the manager. we're still working with the managers to think about. So let's say I am seeing Philip and he's my psychologist, and if I need more and Philip says I can't let you go because of my values and my position, I can't let you go right now, you're in a bad position. We're just working out how the HR managers approve more sessions without names. So that's also just like something that we need to do in the protocol. And just a final note, 55% of the usage is mental health practitioners, and the rest is all over the place, but mostly nutrition, sleep, coaching, and financial services or support. And I want to say on the stigma note, this is a huge issue to deliver into the workplace, to have a variety of things so they can say, oh, I used Cara Connect I actually used it, I met a nutritionist. So they don't have to say they met a psychologist, even though we know most of them are. So it really matters. Uptake really matters if somebody else in your job used it. So we're trying to work so that we offer companies, we say to companies, some of them just want to offer psychologists, but we say, I highly recommend to have a variety of practitioners, especially for men that might start talking to a nutritionist, and then the nutritionist would say, you have to go to see a psychologist. Let's look who's on the hub for you.
Thank you, Tova. There is another question. So how can leadership, and this one is maybe for Philip, how can leadership mitigate against increasing loneliness in a more remote hybrid workplace?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Loneliness is so complex and it's very individualized as well. But I think, increasingly a lot of employers are, organizing appropriate social events and, trying to ensure that everybody is involved in that. And, that sometimes stimulates employees themselves to organize like social hubs, if you like, where you go walking, at the weekends, or the groups of 6 or 7 people just to get together. And I know from many of my friends that long-term friendships come from that process. And sometimes it's just all the time you're just sharing the walk or the hike, for that hour or 2 hours, and you might go for a meal or a drink afterwards, but that's those kind of soft things are really appropriate. And I think it comes down to the ethos of the company that, it promotes that and sees value in it and gives an opportunity for those things to be advertised and to get people involved.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no easy answer. When people have lost partners or, their family have grown up and moved away, that I suppose the answer is to try and encourage positiveness about those processes.
Yeah, we have people all over the place, and we have every other week we have all hands. It's not a big team, but the all hands is useful for telling what's going on in the company, but it's also useful to share cultural recipes and try to connect people differently, and laughing about what you eat for Christmas in different countries, and talk about the cultural background of people. I think connects very well, and then they can start joking about something in their own channel, when they hear they have something in common. I think that's super important when it's growing the company. I think it has to have almost like clubs to do this hybrid, music clubs or whatever, almost like a school.
Could I just add? I think that Tova makes a really important point about cultural appropriateness, and a lot of our sort of recreation revolves around alcohol and going to the pub and everything, and that's really nice. And I don't think I'm advocating that should end, but it should always be, as some of the events can be non-alcoholic, particularly those from an Islamic background, who might find it uncomfortable to be at such things. So, that there are specific events where you deliberately, try to avoid without going against what's accepted norms in our own society here. I think it's important too.
And for the Gen Z that I just touched lightly on, they are, half of them don't want to be in place. They want to be half hybrid. It's not very good for them because of the social media part of their life. They are very lonely. They, the numbers are like today, 30% of 25-year-olds do not socialize at least weekly. So, I mean, this is a really high number, and it's going really steeply down. So a lot of people are not seeing anybody for a long time. So this is also it's a societal problem, of course, but the companies really probably feel it first, that people are just really lonely. And this not socializing lowers quality of life tremendously. So trying to figure out how you can do that hybrid kind of, I know it's never going to be the same, but trying to get them to talk to each other instead of the manager talking over them, I think is as one of the tricks.
Thank you both. So there is another question. I work in emergency services and noticed Tova mentioned critical incident support. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a clinical head of clinical management for Cara Connect, and she has enabled training programs for 30 practitioners on critical incidents like PTSD, offering after something happens. So we do have many languages, but now all trained with a Irish person actually that works for the WHO in these war incidences and in the army. So they know exactly what to do when we call on them. So they are supposed to be on call when there's an accident, and we gather the right support in like a couple of hours, make sure they're available to everybody in the team, and if needed, fly in or drive in a practitioner. So we're basically just helping with emergency services at that point. We are not one-on-one, the police or the ambulance, but it's more like the people that are surrounding the incident, that we are there for them as soon as this happens. And as you know, who asked the question, people are in shock. So it's different kinds of professional services at that point. And then those professionals move them to the wellbeing hub when they're ready to talk to a psychologist or somebody that they trust there.
Thank you, Tova. Another question. So would love to hear more about how life experience can be included when developing programs of support.
Philip.
Yeah, gosh, that's another complex one. But I think if I understand the question right, is the individuality really comes in here, and the need to ensure that you don't have a one size program that fits all, but to really hear about what people's life experience is. I suppose to avoiding over disclosure really is important as well. Like it's really important. I remember when when people with mental health difficulties go on the radio, we really stress this as well. If you're talking about your life story, you don't have to give everything away. Think very carefully about what you want to disclose and what you don't want to disclose. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but those are just be some of my insights around it. Would you like to comment there?
So what we would try is to make sure that the hub represents the cultures that are in the company. We can't always have all culture support surrounding the location of the company, but we try to make sure that they're at least available online. So this is the conversation that we have with the HR team, trying to build the mirror of the company. So making sure that we not necessarily have languages, maybe culture is first and then language is second, so they really see that they have someone to talk to. And then again, I think it's more important than really I realized before, is to make sure that the employees can tell us anonymously, what is missing, so that they can say, can you help me with this part? I have PTSD from rape, there's nobody here that I think I can talk to about it, and we can go and source that person and deliver that back. So that's kind of a thing that I'm working on in my head.
And maybe just to add the importance of people with the lived experience contributing to policy development within an organization, how
Yeah.
services are delivered. You know, it's really, really important. And, you know, we call it PPI, so patient and public involvement, whether it's in research, whether it's in new policies developed by the organization, new initiatives, just testing those out, getting the opinion. And sometimes the voice back can be awkward, but it's really important to listen to the awkward voice, you know, in terms of there could be anger there, not directed at you, but it just comes out. But it's so important to hear that voice and to incorporate those in your strategies and your policies as well as your actions.
I think it's just to add there as well. I think it's very important this year, as European Mental Health Week is in May and the theme is co-creation this year. So just to kind of echo that sentiment, Philip. Francisco, I think we're nearing the end of our webinar.
Yes, we are.
So I think if anyone has any last minute questions, they can always email myself or Francisco. And yeah, from Mental Health Reform, I'd like to say thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much on our side as well. Thank you to everyone who attended this webinar and to the ones that asked questions. And yeah, feel free to follow both Mental Health Reform and Cara Connect in social media platforms, and to connect with both Tova and Philip. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.